I will leave most of this talk to Guillaume. The talk will be about how Continuum and Osmose met and became a thing. This is the pre-Osmose era story here. 37 years before is when I started. And it's interesting that 26 years before Osmose era, the Continuum was basically the same as it is now, except for the details. Of course, then Ed came on the scene, and you just heard an additive talk. I was firmly convinced until Ed that additive was the future, and as Christophe very astutely pointed out, additive in an ecosystem is very different than additive by itself. And in fact, that ecosystem is going to make some crazy sounds, I'm sure. But in any case, Ed purchased a Continuum and got to be from a cool engineering project an instrument. And we had the Egan matrix embedded processor. We had Christophe. Actually, we did not find Christophe. Christophe found us. And we were kind of tired at Musikmesse, and he was playing around. It was great. And then he just stayed, and then people came up to the booth because they figured he worked there, and they asked him questions, and he answered them all. And after a while, we asked him, "Well, can we just leave?" And sure enough, he did the whole show. It was wonderful. Then what I would call year zero is maybe counterpart to the Annunciation more than the birth of. But in any case, we had an expressive e-meeting between Haken Audio and Expressive E at NAMM. And now we're in year 5. As a quick thing on the next page.
Sorry.
I put it at the very end.
You put it, sorry.
He liked these pictures, so I'm going to show a quick thing here.
Yeah, please.
If you look at Osmose and how fast it developed, I know 5 years is a long time to wait nowadays, but boy, I look back. In 37 BOE, I had a working system of sorts with photoelastics, its own ball of wax. Then after I gave up on that, mostly because 2D image processing was very difficult, and the plastic kept melting because the camera needed too bright a light, we went to having rubber with impregnated carbon so that it conducts in one direction. And then a whole field of sensors, and it was the best thing I ever built. Lasts about a half hour for a sheet, and then the carbon breaks down, and then it's not the best thing anymore. And then many years later, actually had rods that were square at first. They would, as you slid, they would sweep out a pattern over the magnets. There's still a lot of interaction, but did figure out that, hey, if we actually mount them, axially mount them, that's good. The Hall effect sensors moved back down there. But anyway, went through many different things. But 26 BOE, we had basically what we have now. And all that tells you is, I don't know a nice word to say this, but this was not enjoyable to play by today's standards. And everything is in the details. The big thing that's, you can go on for your side. The big change for the, with the Osmose is that not only is it, the Ed really brought on cool engineering project to a real instrument and that whole evolution. And now it's actually, that this Egan matrix was incubated in the Continuum goes to something that really is interest for mass consumption. And that's huge for me as an engineer. I'm very proud of the Continuum. But I also realize, like, everybody wants a keyboard, and a Continuum, it's nice, but most people want to inherit the playing technique they have. Most people want more use for the equipment they already have and have it play nice with that. Lots of reasons to have a keyboard, since keyboard is by far the dominant thing. So I'm very excited about the marriage of the two, because as an engineer, unlike an artist, and art doesn't get better or worse if there's mass consumption. But for an engineer, if your stuff goes out and dies, then, well, that's not good engineering by definition. And no matter how pretty your bridge is, if it collapses, it's not good engineering. So anyway, I do believe in the future of the Osmose and the Continuum. I do believe that it's 100 years later, a bit like the dream of the Bonneau with continuous and keyboard, and both of them vastly improved with new technology now. So it's not there yet. You know, everything takes time, especially a real instrument as opposed to a flash in the pan device like we're used to. But I have high hopes. So I'm going to turn it over to Guillaume, and yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so I'm Guillaume from Expressive. So before making the Osmose instrument, we first made our first. First, it was it's still a controller called Touche. So all this project came from research in the University of Pierre and Marie Curie in France, and the goal was to find the same kind of interaction as the Touche part of the own Bonneau, because this Touche part, the mechanical system was a bit lost during time, and it was an idea to find other manner to find the same kind of interaction, because on the haptic part, the mechanical feedback was really interesting. So, and just to bring the volume directly with one end and have the pitch with the other end, you can be really expressive. And so the own Bonneau, there is some pieces, and the own Bonneau could play with different normal with orchestral instruments. So our goal is, after we found a manner with small silicon cylinders to have a way to have a quite good mechanical interaction, we found that it could be interesting to find different manner to manipulate the sound. So here you have, in fact, a first pressure part on the bottom, another pressure part on the front part, and you can make a vibrato with lateral movement. So the idea here was to provide something that could be plugged to another instrument or other synthesizer to bring some expressivity to kind of any other keyboard or synth, and also to manipulate a lot of different parameters with just one gesture, because it's quite difficult to manipulate the cutoff and the volume of oscillators with just two hands and playing at the same time. So after making the Touche, we thought that some people already said that, oh, it could be really great if you can make a Touche for each note of a keyboard, so you can apply directly all the gesture with both hands. But first, the idea wasn't, we don't see, oh, we will make a keyboard like that. The idea was to make just a keyboard with a great poly aftertouch, because during time, when we began the project, there was no more keyboard with poly aftertouch, new keyboard with poly aftertouch. Of course, you got the CS80, and then you got Equasonic synthesizers that got poly aftertouch. But after that, all the expressivity on a keyboard synthesizer was lost. So it was our first idea, and then after making a first prototype with poly aftertouch, we were thinking, oh, it could be great to also bring a vibrato or a pitch bend. But first, the idea was to bring it on all the keyboard, like for instance for the own Bonneau, so no individual pitch for each note. And so we make some different prototype, and we arrived at the point that we made a less than 1 octave prototype, 3D printed, with I think the keyboard was like that, and there's something large like that in wood with a lot of cables that we hidden to show it to Christophe and then to Ed. So I think it was in January 2019 we first like Lippold said, we had a connection at NAM with Alexander and Victor, who are the founder of Expressive, and we were still at the beginning really impressed on what Haken made with the Continuum and have all this expressivity on this instrument and also all the sound engine, because after making Touche, we were thinking that having a keyboard which is with this just controller could be a problem, because a lot of musicians don't want to connect it to a computer or don't know how to make the configuration with a plugin, and there were not a lot of plugins which were MP compatible at that time. So it was very important for us to provide a sound engine that can bring all that can bring the expressivity from the keyboards that we were trying to make. So I know that we first contact Christophe because it was, and we were a bit stressed to show him this first prototype, because it was you have to have a lot of imagination because it was just a few notes, and the vibrato was really terrible. It was barely impossible to make a good vibrato or even a pitch, or in making some vibrato by itself. So it was very difficult to play, to not play in fourths with it. But yes, Christophe was quite, I think, happy with this first prototype, and so he said that it would be great to show it to Edmond. So that way we met this first kind of meeting in order to show to Ed this woody prototype. And yes, and we were really happy because Ed trust us, and on the idea of making a real keyboard from this 4 or 5 note, and so that's how all the project and the collaboration began. So this picture was, I think, one of the first we got. I found kind of your first PDF, Ed, with all your notes, and it's quite. We are quite close to your first document and all the feedback I know on the different run. Yeah. And so yes, it was just an extract of what Ed sent us to show what the different of interaction between the Continuum and the Osmose. And so I can show you. So we made a second prototype. I can show you a kind of. It was at the time it was with external with an external synthesizer, not with a matrix, but it can show you how it. So it was, yes, just with. So that's it. Let's get the sound. So all the electronic there and all the mechanical is completely different from the actual Osmose, but the different interaction as the first pressure part, the aftertouch was already there. The pitch bend was still really difficult to control on it. But it was for us a first step to make something something that is more close to the actual keyboard. And then after this one, we made another a second prototype, a 32 key prototype, and on this one we were able to have a direct media output, and Lippold provided us a 3 DSP. So at that time the 3 DSP was about like that on size. So and so we showed this first prototype in a private session in an event called Simplex in Burbank near Los Angeles. And at that time we were still not really confident of how people will react to this keyboard, because to know, for instance, the first pressure part, so the normal key length was something like 3 millimeters, so it's quite different to a normal keyboard. And at the Simplex, we went there and we got just three meetings with different keyboardists. And when we bring that to that private session, during about 1 week, we finally met more than 100 demos, because people were quite really happy with this prototype. So it was this one. So there is still no DSP inside it, but you can put it as a normal luggage on the plane. So it was, and that's so. It was a kind of first, the first played record by other musicians. And it was also great to show that to our investor, so to show them that. So I pass all the marketing and comment on that, but it was people really support us. It was really important, because we got kind of great connection with different musicians and keyboardists, and they give us feedback on how to have what they wanted, what they think about the keyboard, and how we can make another version from this one. And it was also, I think, from this moment we always worked with musicians and with keyboardists to find the best way to make this keyboard, because we know that some keyboardists prefer synthesizer type of keyboard. Some pianists prefer a kind of more weighted keyboard, and we also got this continuous interaction. So it was really hard to find the right balance between those different mechanical feedbacks that keyboardists wanted under their finger. And so yes, it was a lot of feature wasn't accessible on this keyboard, because we Lippold and Ed still had to make some modification on the DSP, even if you can plug any external device on the Continuum. We wanted to have the same kind of interaction. At that time, it was just with external MIDI, and it was for quite a long time. But for instance, to make the weighted portamento possible on the keyboard, Haken had to make you had to make some modification on that point, and on other point. I don't know, Lippold, if you want to talk on those kind. Okay. And so, yes, after this keyboard, we wanted to make something closer to what we expected for the final product. We also asked a lot if musicians prefer a 49 or 61 keyboard, and it was half and half. So finally, we released this 49 keyboard, because for live musician, it's easier also to put it to take it on a plane, or so. And it was also easier to provide a quite. It's not. It's a bit. Of course, it's a bit expensive as an instrument, but. If you think of with the R&D time and all the industrial process, we really wanted to have something quite accessible on that keyboard, and so that's how we made this 49 key 3D printed prototype. So the well, it was the video that we made for the pre-order. So it was about 3 years ago, and it's quite close. So on this prototype, there is no interface. So it was just metal, and so yes, the DSP was still outside, and so yes. For changing preset, etc., it was on those videos. I was hide somewhere to control and to change different parameters, and so after this one, so we worked also with our designer to make something something closer to what we anticipated, and at that time, Lippold miniaturized the DSP card, so it's not exactly, it's really close to the actual DSP board. So we passed from something like that to this small DSP, and it's really close to the one in the slim version on the Continuum.
Yes, yes. I was afraid to give you something untested.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
Well, and then you know, Theo also had to go through. I mean, I have a board design, but then to go through and actually redesign it and make all the changes, it's always hard to tell where the errors crept in. So it's way better to have us really use it for a while, and then so it went very smoothly.
Yeah. So yes, it's. With all the different things we had, where I think it's really great to find two company and people who are really passionate, because it was a quite hard time with the COVID. We are not living on the same country, so we had just this Friday meeting every week to try to make. The DSP and the keyboard worked, and yeah, sometimes you need a lot of tests and to exchange a lot of MIDI data, sensor data, etc., to make everything work well. And with this DSP prototype, we made another prototype version, which was quite fragile, but was the idea there. Oh, I don't know why is it. We had the opportunity, we finished the prototype during night, and the next morning we turned this video with Randy Kerbert, with also a Continuum player since a long time. So yes, it was, and it was also the first, I think, video, and also the first time that an acoustic instrument play with Osmose and hear the Continuum, and also the Onde on this video. I will not play all the video, but that's the idea. And then after, yes, we made a different iteration of the industrial final version, but it took a lot of different versions, because yes, it was COVID time, and we had to we cannot go to the factory, and we had to to send them some information, and then they send us some pieces, and it took 3 weeks, and we had to change something, edit it again 3 weeks, etc. But during this time, it was also great to work on the DSP, on all the interaction. It was also during that time that the pressure potentiometer worked. Yes, for sure, some example here on that pictures, you saw different color between key, because it was for us the occasion to first test with one part how will be the final texture of one part and to another. I think that that was the first that Ed and Christophe received. It was the T1 version, so it was also easier to work together. Because during a really long time we had just 1 or 2 prototypes to work with, and it was, I think, the first version that we were able to send to you.
I had the one before the small tool tab.
Ah, you still got it?
I did about 100 presets first.
Yeah,
with the very initial one. It was quite crappy, but
yeah.
very nice.
And you know that one you sent to Lippold, which only had the 1 octave?
Yeah.
I have that one, and he sent it to me, and it's now in my storage set. If you ever need it back.
No. But yes, it was better to have 1 octave than nothing during years, and yes, in fact, finally it took 3 years between the pre-orders and the beginning of this year that we now release Osmose, and yes, I think we are really happy to now have this kind of new keyboard, expressive keyboard that bring all this new interaction with the normal keyboard form factor, and yes, I don't know if you want.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of, there's sort of the concentration on hardware here, but there's also all the work that goes into user interface, and the best user interfaces are ones where it's not obvious that somebody really thought about it a long time. And so here, when you go menu diving and such, it's actually quite straightforward. It's very nice. The icon system and the organization system and stuff is very understandable. And so there's many hours of work and all those other parts of it. And of course, for Guillaume, he was the main curator of the whole sound library for it. Just an enormous amount of work and all those things.
Where did you get the blanking pics guy?
It was during a test station that we made with some electronic musician with Nausea and Skrillex, and one of them got this Binson, and it worked really great.
What's blanking?
Oh, why is blanking? I was thinking of the Binson. Sorry, the Binson EcoRex. I don't know why. Because on my screen it's not blinking, so I don't know.
It's doing that algorithm like in the additive where it's going back and forth in the video.
But yes, I think sometimes we know that even our team is we are passionate, but the human on any project, the human factor is really important. You have to really trust on what you are making and to quite understand each other, to understand the approach, and so yes, to know to work during those. I think we are especially we are really honored to work with you three on that project, and yeah. And now I think something is quite interesting is we release the keyboard, but there is still so much to explore with the Haken matrix and the Osmose. So we saw some examples this morning, but I think so. Right now on our marketing and our video, we really focus on keyboardists. traditional keyboardists, because we know that for a lot of keyboard players, to have something that you can make some pitch, etc., can be really. Some keyboardists are sometimes really afraid to see, okay, it will be so different from my normal keyboard, so I'm not sure I will be able to play and to keep my skill available. So of course, there is you have to learn how to bring expression, but here there is a lot of continual players, so you already know how you can bring expression to sounds, but yes, I think we are thinking that it can be just a beginning of what musician can do with the Osmose and
Guillaume,
yes.
Yeah. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, it doesn't really come across when we go through these versions, but I know a tremendous amount of time was spent getting the feel of the keys correct, and also the alignment of the keys. It's these mechanical issues that were like really hard to solve effectively. So
for on the mechanical feedback on the key, we made, I don't know how, 100. So the interaction there on the pressure part is made with very particular silicon pieces. And so we made 100 of iteration of those pieces, and so sometimes we send some to add to see, okay, we are now at that point we are quite happy, but we know that there is still some issue with that, and how do you feel it? And that's also the point to make a lot of testation with different kind of musicians, different kind of keyboardists, because we got their feedback and we try to enhance each time the version. We know, for instance, that you gave us some feedback that the black key was quite different. The mechanical feedback of the black and the white key was quite not good, and we have to work on that. So we made different versions to be able to test that and to have those feedback. And on the so every pieces here on the plastic part are to keep this kind of spaces, because it's you can move the key here. It was really difficult to adjust the balance between two keys and to keep the same spaces. And so yes, it's a 0.2 millimeters issue, but some people of our team pass. I don't know how many weeks to adjust those little gaps to have something quite good.
Why the width of the one key are different? For example, the C key is larger than the other key. Why?
So on keyboards, not all the you have different norm. So there are sorry. You can take the same spaces bit on the end of the key or at the beginning. I'm sorry for my English on that. But so if you take an organ or if you for different kind of organ or different kind of piano, you will see that you will not have the same length on some key. And so we took one. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact reference, but we took one of some norm because for aesthetical and industrial reason, we were thinking it was the best. So it's not. I know that I not answered totally to your question, but it's really based to a specific kind of keyboard.
Yeah, I mean, right? Keyboards aren't uniform anyway. Now there are people that do make uniform keyboards, but that's not a traditional. Certainly, at least our clavichord was different than our harpsichord, which is different than our piano at home.
About the width of the
Oh yeah, they vary. Yeah, they're not.
Every white key has the same width, but not on the Osmose.
Yeah, but some organ, for instance, don't have the same width.
Yeah. I think that's very much of an invention of who's the Italian keyboard maker? Yeah, I think they started doing that, and then everybody started doing that. But that, I think traditionally that's actually not even the case. Certainly not in older instruments.
Yes,
Any plans making it bigger so you can approach 88 piano, maybe?
Supersize it.
Supersize. So from the beginning of on the conception, we thought of to make the variation of number of keys quite easy to make. But really, I don't know when we will make a larger version, because first we have to really concentrate of this on this version. But anyway, it's possible to make larger version quite easily on whole side, and so we will see then when we will really ramp up the production on the 49 version. We'll see what will be next on in terms of.
If you flip it around, you can see each octave.
Yeah.
It's kind of a module.
So no, if you let me explain you. It will be. So yes, under the key, will not let me. Okay. So yes, under each octave you have those parts, and in fact those parts contains different cylinder we got. So if no, we made different tests soon, but if I don't know, if 10 years or something like that, the only risk is that it's 10 or 20 years, you have something like 1 millimeter less, but it will be normally completely the same on the keyboard. But anyway, you can change that part. So that's why we made that not in matter of modularity, but also a matter of to be sure that you will be able, even in 10 or 20 years, to change some part. And it's the same about each note there can be changed without changing all the keyboard, because anybody can disassemble the Osmose without. There is no, it's just some screw. There is no glue or anything else on it. Yes.
How easy was it to find the manufacturer?
So the manufacturer is the same as Touche. But because we on this, so it's a French company based in China, and it was quite really great for us because they are specialized in plastic injection. And on the same factory, you can have all the parts and have the assembly. Sorry, the assembly directly on the same place. So, but on the mechanical, just on this, only on the assemblement part, it's really we learn a lot with Touche, because it's impossible to make to assemble or disassemble a Touche by yourself. You need it's 100 of pieces on it, so we learned a lot with Touche in order to make this new keyboard. Yes, it's easy to assemble, but to make the plastic injection and all small adjustment before that, it was quite it was a challenge, really. And yes, sir.
Who was the person that decided to do the exposed rear part of the keys? Because I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's actually a musically playable.
Yeah, it's a
chromatic glissando thing, but
it was both on the yes for the playing experience, but first it was also for aesthetical reason, because the goal with Osmose wasn't to have something too flashy or something you can get on your place. I don't think the design will be so will be too different in 10 years, and because all the keyboard is mechanical, I think it was important for us to expose that special feature. Just because when you press a key, you can see this part moving also, and you're right. If you can on some preset, and if you change the sensibility, you can play it chromatically, so it could be also it's also a playing purpose to expose that part. And yes, I don't know, Lippold or...
Some people may say, well, you eliminated the ability to stack things behind it, but in actual fact, you can always attach. You have nice attachment posts in the back of it for putting a piece of acrylic
around it. Yeah. So yes, it's a goal that one day we perhaps provide some accessory, so you can put an expander or something else. And we know that some people already made some accessory like you. Exactly.
The connection is using those posts on the Osmose.
So an important thing about the own connection, right, is that you feel the vibrations in your fingers. It's not just the sound field, and it makes a big difference. So if it's on a stand separate, it's not nearly as nice as if it's really attached.
So,
in fact, the black owned was especially made to match the black Osmose.
Yeah. And yes, it's also so here it was all the kind of more industrial part we had, but as you said, Lippold, on the collaboration, it was also important for us to really understand the InGaN matrix and what are the key elements in order to expose it on our UI. So people, if people don't want to make preset by themselves, they can directly make adjustment directly on the keyboard and voila. And I don't know if on your part you have something to add, Lippold or Christophe, but yes.
Any questions? I guess one of the things that stands out for me is I've worked through the university and through also as a consultant in the past, a lot of different companies, but Expressive E really stands out as a company that has a very good company culture. And yeah, it's very nice to see the good guys actually be able to do something like this. As Ed said, he didn't believe it was possible. So there we go.
What did you find was the biggest challenge with getting the manufacturing exactly like you wanted it?
I think it was for two parts. It was on the spacing between notes, because it's so to keep the same kind of spacing between different notes, and all the calibration process to get the unit work when you receive it without calibrate each note by yourself. So we pass a lot of time on those 2 points in order to get it working. And yes, it was also during and all the lockdown, COVID time, and electronic electronic crisis was also a challenge, but mechanically it was those two approach.
The DSP board that you showed looks like it has 3 chips on it.
Yeah.
Were those the old? Not the old.
Don't say old.
Yeah. Were those the classic?
Yeah, classic.
Shark.
Classic.
Or was it the one with the 2 sharks and an arm?
Oh no, the 2 sharks and arm was actually a post-COVID product. And one of the reasons I frantically started working on that is that after the shortage of electronics, people started up their factories again. And for many companies, it's really their new products they wanted to get out there first. COVID was a long time. They kept working during COVID. They had made new things. They just weren't able to produce them. And so it looked for a while that was the only chance of getting chips, was to use their very latest products, because that's what they started up with right after COVID. So, and actually for a lot of companies, they just dropped older versions of things completely. So anyway, so that was why we did that, is just to be ready.
Yeah.
But it's purely as many designers, have gone through. It's purely what's available, and this was a protection against that. At the time I started with it, had no idea that there was actually many other reasons to start on it. That was as hard as it was, but yeah, it's just for availability, just as insurance. So now, as far as playing it, there's really very little difference. What you have inside, but that means we can buy whatever is available, or Expressive E can buy whatever is available on large scale. Me as a continuum builder, it's very different, because if I need 100 of something, that's a lot for me, but it's not a lot for somebody who wants to make a keyboard.
Okay. So, there's not any other question? Or okay. So yes.
You said that calibration was a challenge.
Yeah.
Is there any risk of it coming out of calibration if it's handled roughly?
No. It was really to have the calibration is really on the memory. Is a really special part of the memory, and there is no risk. You can move it in any way. You will keep the same calibration on it. In any way, we also keep all the calibration data of all the keyboard on our side, so we really know what calibration is for each keyboard. So, but each keyboard has its own calibration. It's not a global calibration for all the units.
But you do save it centrally just in case.
We never know. It's important to know that if one day we saw that one unit has a special single calibration or something like that, more we got data, the better it is on that. And anyway, it's also there are several ways to make the calibration of the keyboard. And see, I don't know if there's a lot of ways to adjust the sensitivity directly from the unit. But I don't know if a day your keyboard fall from 2 meters or something like that, and you just break one knot, and you have to change this knot to a new one, then we can provide you. You can also make some directly manual calibration directly on the unit without sending it to the factory. So there's multiple ways to be sure that the calibration.
I think in full humility, I have to say, presumably part of the question is I do the same thing, right? I keep the calibration a safe part of memory, but this is quite a different operation. People like Marie and various other people spend a long time really testing everything. Where my day job as a professor, and the Haken Audio is this break-even company of half-timers. Which is very different from the operation they have. So I think I have the right idea. It just doesn't work all the way. And in their case, the memory protection and everything else really works. And the kind of problem that Christophe had, where he added an extra additive bank, and he loses everything. Yes, that shouldn't happen. And in our case, one of the reasons I retired is because I know that, and it's going to take more than half time. To address these things over the next year.
That's it. When you think about, for instance, the firmware and the development on the firmware, a lot of people think just about the interface and how to manage parameters, etc. But in fact, a big part of the firmware team worked directly with the factory and with our mechanical engineers to make sure all these parts will be okay and safe. And I think Marie, who is here, really knows that. She's working especially a lot on this part. So, yes.
So I think from the beginning, Expressive E took not a big corporation attitude towards it, but a much more serious, with investors and with real startup money and such, which we never did, to have the team that can do this. By the way, I was so impressed you did it in 5 years, and I realized that BOE 0 was actually labeled wrong, that I'm off by a year, I remember. So anyway, so 4 years, it's pretty incredible to me I've been at it for, well, longer than that. So it's an incredible thing. But there's a lot of things that can be done now, and what I find so impressive about it is the sensing technology and the key bed itself. You know, these things are really good. And at this point, yeah, there's all sorts of things that can be done in software, all sorts of things that need to be done, and everybody knows need to be done. But at the core of it, the unit is really good. And the sensing is super accurate. In fact, if you press lightly on a key, right, it's substantially less pressure than it takes to trigger on a continuum. So that's a big deal. And I'm not embarrassed about that. I can tell you why. Well, in a continuum, when you press down, right, you're pressing neoprene and it presses several of those rods. I measure 12 of them, but even for light pressure, you're pressing at least 6 of them. So you have 6 springs. In this case, it's a different kind of technology, but you're really pressing against one, I don't know what you call what you have, but it's not a spring, it's not a piano wire spring, but you're pressing against one item, not against 6. So right away, there's huge advantages to a keyboard in that way, because the continuous surface, there's a lot of back pressure. I worked very hard to get where we are, and I'm still improving it some, but they're already there.
Does that affect the future design of Continuum?
No, because on a key, the great thing about a key, right, it's a lever, and they're very independent of each other. So a single high-quality Hall effect sensor per key works great, where on the Continuum, because it's continuous surface, you're always activating multiple sensors, and each one has a spring associated with it. So it is what it is, it's just different. But one nice thing is on a Continuum, you tend to play lower polyphony. It's just too hard to place lots of fingers. And that's one of the reasons I really like the combination of Osmose and Continuum, because you can play a lead line or something on a Continuum with, 1 or 2 note polyphony or whatever you need for it, but then play the chords on the Osmose and take advantage of both worlds. And I really do think that in the long term, that's a big future. In the short term, it's extremely expensive, and very few people have even explored all the menus on the Osmose. So it's too early to talk about such things, but still we got it in our picture for the conference.
Lippold was mentioning several tries of sensor technology before ending up on the Helvetica sensors and the roads and so on. On your side, did you try several sensing technology before ending up?
Yeah, because for instance, on some on the prototype I showed at the beginning, it was we took the same. It was optical sensors that because we already we use that kind of sensor on Touche, so it was the first object just for us to begin with those kind of sensor, and after that so for a lot of reasons it was better to change to other type of sensor, but we began with optical, and we reached it, but and we also saw, and in terms of definition, etc., it was really not the best sensor for the keyboard.
In the future, do you have any idea to make a real Z axis?
No, because for us.
Sorry, I ask this question because it's funny, because I'm sure you already saw a lot of video on YouTube about Osmose, and your keyboard is so expressive that a lot of people do this kind of
a lot of people still think that's easy, but we really made those tests at the beginning, and we didn't make this choice for 2 reasons. The main one is, for us, it's always important to have mechanical feedback on your finger. If you close your eyes, you really need to feel something that will, like if you bend the string, you feel it under your finger, and if you do something like that, you will not be able to really control that. And the other part is because of you have white and black key. It's really difficult on some chords to really have, even if you made some different kind of firmware adjustment on that, it's not. We really prefer to have these two pressure parts, but yeah, that's.
There's another thing. When you do this, and if people move their fingers on the y-axis now, it's doing something. Because in fact, you're also moving on the z-axis. So it would not have been possible to really have no impact on the z-axis while moving on the y-axis. It's just mechanically
Even on the Continuum, one of the early things was a real grid, but because of expense and other things, magnetically it was just not practical to do that. And also, your hands just aren't, it would be a weird playing style, right? If you want the same Y on multiple fingers, you'd have to curl your fingers under or something. So on the Continuum, the Y is quite approximate also. And it's good, it's okay because there's lots of counterpart to that in acoustic instruments. Here it's interesting because the Y in some sense is much more accurate. And to me as a non-keyboard player, it seems very odd, but I've just seen all sorts of sounds that only work because of the setup. And it's interesting is you can go out of the Y region, back into the Z region, and vice versa. You can do all these funny things that actually make for very particular playing techniques that are very interesting. So it's like anything else. It's one of those, the limitations of something also become its positive features. But I think if you really want to inherit offset black and white keys, the Y direction physically just doesn't make enough sense. And for fat-fingered people like Ed, you wouldn't even be able to play in between the. He says it all the time, so I can say it. But you wouldn't be able to fit those sausages in between the black keys. So so I think it to me that was one of the most surprising decisions, and it's great.
Something is that's why it's also great to have both a Continuum and an Osmose, because, for instance, if you take a kind of guitar preset or something like that, and that something is really great on the Continuum. That, for example, with the y-axis, you can directly have the mute directly on it, and because you don't have this black key, you can directly go on it and play it like that. And on the Osmose, it's another approach. Here, it's more global parameters. You have to move with the macro or the mod wheel, but you have other interaction, etc. And the goal also is with having this first pressure part and the aftertouch is with Osmose aftertouch. You can of course playing like a normal keyboard, but if you play, you have even more dynamic than a normal keyboard, because if you play a bit harder, you can directly go on the maximum aftertouch.
I have one and I played it for a while, so it feels like a kind of super aftertouch. It's very good. So you first, so when you come from Continuum, you're used to the y-axis, and in the first thing or when I saw the first videos, I thought, well, they have this as well. But once you understand how it feels or how it works in reality, you find out, well, that's cool. It's because it is different. So you can approach the sounds different. So you have the y-axis on the Continuum, so you don't need it 2 times. So you have it there.
Well, yeah, if you have both, I'm a fan of both, but for obvious reasons. So.
And you can have this super aftertouch.
Yeah,
so it's cool. I like the combination.
Yeah, the combination is really great.
I think one of the things that when keyboard players approach the Osmose, you're used to wanting to make a full key drop, and you don't have to for a lot of things. Like Ed was saying, you can stroke the back of the, that's behind the keys even for something, and just barely touch it and make that very musical. And you have to get used to the idea that you may just be barely stroking the keys. And I think maybe people who play like a Hammond organ, where you get the multiple contacts, where you just, like there's like the XK5 has 5 or 6 sensors, depending on how far down you go, and you have to be used to that.
So you go on the light again.
Is the writing on my face good?
Yeah, you got the matrix on your red. It's the best picture you can get. Yeah. What kind of formula? What letter? Thank you.
Also, one of the things that threw me at first was that the different sounds react differently. There are some things that go in at the top surface, which are easier to relate to with the keyboard player immediately, whereas some of them have the soft travel to get anything out of it. So just, determining between those two what you're playing took me a minute.
Yeah, do we have another minute for me to give a brilliant thought? Or are you ready to go?
No, you can.
Because it could be later too.
As you wish.
So I just think this is not an insult to any of us. We're all really smart. But I think one of the things that Rob points out one of the things that Rob points out is that on piano or even on synth keyboard, right? There's no back pressure. So you can hold big chords. And the Osmose there is actually substantially amount of back pressure depending on where you're pressing. But I thought about this last night after eating too many sweets too late. And on a piano, on an Osmose with different sound design, like a piano, the energy comes into the system from the hammer. And once the hammer is done doing its thing, you're basically just holding it until the dampers come in. The energy is flowing out of it. We can certainly do sound designs where very much like it, where the energy goes into it, and then the note lasts, even if you go to very minimum pressure on the Osmose. And it lasts until you damp it. We can do the exact thing without any changes to anything. It would take a different playing technique, but basically you only back off. It's just like on piano. It doesn't matter exactly where you hold the keys down, as long as the damper isn't down. So people would learn to back off a little bit and relax their hands so they don't have to wear a brace.
I mean, it's just some special fractured wrist pads.
Yeah, exactly. But these things are all, when I thought about it last night, why didn't we do that? It's like so obvious, but everything takes time. But I actually think for inheriting piano technique, it is, that's super important, and it's just another sound design that over the, we'll hear more about sound design for, it's just all these ideas.
That clavichord does that. All that initial sound comes from that strike.
Yeah, okay, well, we'll practice with that. I bet you can back off and move your hands from your time. So I think there's all sorts of